I don't know how many of you are Chicago One addicts, and I can't see you to find out if your hands are up, but if you're a Chicago One addict, you must be delighted because it's back. The series is very popular, and it's produced by one of the most successful people in television today. His name is Richard Anthony Wolff, better known as Dick Wolf. He was raised in Manhattan to a Jewish father and an Irish Catholic mother. He was raised Catholic. He even became an altar server. They don't call them altar boys anymore, an altar server. But his fraternal Jewish influence could never have been lost on him. I'll tell you why. I want to use Chicago Med as an example, but I could use anything. It has a very predictable rhythm. We all know it. On almost every episode, there is a scene during which the patient is on the table and a surgeon is delicately working inside a bloody head or a chest or a stomach. All is going great until all of a sudden, without warning, the patient's blood pressure crashes unexpectedly. The surgeon starts feeling around and finds the bleed and barks orders to give him this or that instrument and to pack it. Then he stops the bleed. He gives a sigh of relief, and then all of a sudden the patient's heart stops completely. The surgeon orders, "Charge to 200," and yells, "Clear!" And since we continue to hear the flatline tone on the heart monitor, the surgeon commands, "Charge to 300," and yells, "Clear!" And at this point, the patient's heart is either recovering or a nurse says sinus tack. It's fine. Or they keep giving compressions on amphetamine. Then the all too familiar background music starts to grow, and it gets louder. And I think that music is so horrible. Anytime they play it, I don't like it on those Chicago One series. It's just horrible. But it starts to grow extremely annoying and faster and louder, and it crescendos to enhance the anxiety of the scene. Seeing nothing but a flat line on the monitor, the very emotional surgeon starts to pound out a very forceful form of CPR, sometimes even reaching in and manually pumping the heart with his hand. Soon we hear the other doctors say the dreaded words, "Call it." The surgeon ignores them and continues compressions until a colleague touches the surgeon's arm and says, "It's over, call it." The surgeon then wipes his forehead, looks at the clock, declares the time, and walks off in disgust. Similar things like that happen exactly the same way in Chicago Fire and Chicago PD. Whenever the first responders get so frustrated when after trying and trying they cannot change the outcome. The reason I say that Dick Wolf had to have been influenced by his paternal line comes from this week's Torah reading, the one we read tomorrow. It has a similar kind of feel. Instead of a surgeon refusing to let his patient go, even though he has to, Paro refuses to let God's people go, even though he has to. Like the doctor, Paro stands in defiance of God's will. Instead, like in Dick Wolf's stories, Paro refuses even through the first 9 of the plagues to let God's people go. Paro's highly trusted servants tell him, "Don't you know that Mitzrayim is doomed? If you don't let them go, don't you know that?" These servants were Paro's best and most loyal advisors. But even though they begged, did Paro listen? Nope. What hardens the drive of the doctors, the heart and the drive of the doctors, the fire and police personnel, not to give up? What is that? Perhaps that is what the Torah means when it says that God hardened Paro's heart. Perhaps God gave us the ability to harden our heart when we feel it is important to continue doing something that we know is not going to turn out well. This is a very powerful lesson to me. we learn that just as it is important to know when there is hope, it's even more important to know when there isn't hope. We all know this from our own experiences. Who here has never experienced a situation when things were going just great and then all of a sudden down comes the sledgehammer? If any of you say that never happened to you, I don't believe it. Most of us have difficulty knowing when to quit. It is an important life skill. Whether we are talking about something major like losing a job or a relationship or a loved one, or whether we are dealing with something relatively minor like dropping our ice cream cone on the sand-covered boardwalk. At the time things happen, we are not willing to give up. We get in a fender bender and we come out the next morning and think that overnight the bend in our car's metal had healed all by itself. When the people we trust, the people in our inner circle, urge us to accept what's happening, we need to understand that it is wise to listen to them. These are the people who know us the best, so we need to trust them. Here's the problem. We're Americans. It's not such a problem that we're Americans, but that we're in a society which tells us never to quit. Keep going. Keep striving. Keep going. Don't quit. You're not a quitter. This is kind of bad because sometimes it's necessary to quit. Sometimes we have to find the nearest New Jersey jug handle and take a U-turn. When we keep going with a strategy that is not working, we usually do so because of something called the sunken costs fallacy. Sunken cost fallacy. What is that? The sunken cost fallacy is an idea that we should not quit a given action because we have put so much effort and money into the cause already. How can you quit? After all that, quitting now would be such a waste, we think. This notion, when you think about it, is a complete fallacy because all the effort and money invested has already been wasted. You're not going to get it back. It is like buying more stock in a company that is going through Chapter 7, going out of business. Honestly, does it make sense to continue to burn any more by continuing down the same path? We cannot bring people back to life. We cannot restore a failed relationship. And it is a horrible idea to try to eat that ice cream that had fallen onto the boardwalk. Now, I know that the late, great country singer Kenny Rogers was not Jewish. I checked him out. He wasn't Jewish on any side as far back as anybody knows. But I think he captured the point of this Shabbos' Torah reading more than anybody in the song The Gambler. You got to know when to hold 'em. You got to know when to fold 'em. You got to know when to walk away. And you got to know when to run. And with that, I want to wish you all a Shabbat Shalom. And Am Yisrael Chai.